Hey gamers, a lot of people like to compare KSI and Jake Paul because they are rivals in the game of YouTube boxing. And something that both men are criticised for is having easy opponents. Now, is this true? Not really, but a lot of people seem to say it anyway. And even if KSI and Jake Paul fought fucking prime Muhammad Ali, they'd still probably both get slated for fighting someone easy, so it is what it is. But today, I want to compare KSI and Jake Paul's opponents to see who's really had the hardest string of opponents. So let's do that. This is ranking every KSI and Jake Paul opponent from worst to best. Let's get it. We're going to be looking at the opponents from when they fought KSI and Jake. So we're not going to be looking at them now because that wouldn't make sense because that's not when they fought them. For example, Swarms, we will be looking at Swarms when he fought KSI when he was fat and chubby and couldn't fight, instead of the Swarms now who fought Deji. Speaking of which, coming in at last place is Swarms. Yep, fat Swarms. Who would have seen this one come in? I mean, there's a reason he was the first opponent of a night for KSI. Swarms wasn't really meant to fight KSI, but he did anyway on 2 weeks training, and he was terrible. There's nothing really to say. He loses to everyone Jake and KSI fought elsewhere, so yeah. Next up, I have Ben Asrin. Now, Ben Asrin is a fighter, but he's not a boxer by any means, and he sucks. Like, he really sucks. He's slow, old, he doesn't even want to win. He lasted less time than Nate Robinson did against Jake Paul. Let's be real, Ben Asrin loses to old school Deji. And I know people are going to be like, no, that's blah, blah, blah. But let's be real, Ben Asrin just doesn't even want to fight that much. Next up, I got Deji from the old school YouTube boxing days. Yeah, Deji, he was meh. He definitely could have beaten Jake if he actually trained, but he didn't really train and just relied on his natural instinct to fight. And he did decent, but, you know, at the time it was decent. Nowadays, pretty terrible. After Deji, I got Gib. Yeah, Gib now is a bit of a beast, but back in the day, he could barely throw a punch. Seriously, go watch Gib's first 2 fights. He can barely throw a punch correctly. So then for his third fight to fight Jake Paul in a pro fight, I mean, we all saw how it was going to go. Not at the time. We all thought Gib was going to win at the time before we knew anything about boxing. But looking back, yeah, there's a reason Gib got absolutely murked. After Anis Gib, I got Nate Robinson. This guy was actually decent if you look at the fight and really analyze Nate Robinson. Yeah, he did a lot of bad things, like running with his head just kind of out, not protecting himself. But he did some good things, like he had the aggression, he landed some punches, but obviously he was nowhere near the level of Jake Paul, and he's pretty low on this list. He's pretty ass. Next up, I got Joe Weller. Now, yeah, Joe Weller, he was pretty tentative to fight KSI, but he did land some good shots and showed some okay boxing skill. He was definitely more of a difficult fight for KSI that day in February 2018 than Nate Robinson was for Jake Paul. Next up, I got the 2-in-1 night extravaganza, Pineda. Yes, Pineda. Now, you might be thinking, but Logan, when Pineda fought KSI, he was butt cheeks. But let's be real, the reason that Pineda was butt cheeks was because the crowd got to him. Pineda was shit scared of the crowd, the surroundings, everything going on around him, the bright lights, and that's why he panicked and started doing the back of the head shit. But go look at round 2. Pineda wasn't that bad, actually. I mean, yeah, he was getting his ass kicked, but still, you know, he did okay. Okay, now we're getting into the actual difficult opponents, okay? We got Phastemper next. Everyone above him is, like, actually a difficult challenge, including Phastemper himself. So Phastemper was not great, but he was good. You know, he had already fought twice. He was a decent boxer, and he was a southpaw, big, long, rangy. And KSI took him out there in 1 round. So, yeah. Straight after Phastemper, we have Joe Fournier, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, Joe Fournier. Joe Fournier was slow to begin with, but he said himself he's more of a 12-round fighter, so he was just warming into the fight. And Joe Fournier landed a decent shot or 2 on KSI. And this is the most experienced KSI we have, by the way. Better than the one who fought Phastemper. And Joe Fournier pieced him up a little bit at times. But obviously KSI was outworking and beating Joe Fournier and took him out in the second round with an amazing spinning back kick. After Fournier, we got Tyron Woodley, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, Tyron Woodley, the frozen one, as many people call him. Woodley was pretty good in the first fight against Jake, you know. He landed that one big shot in round 4, which wobbled Jake and almost dropped him. But let's be real, Woodley, he didn't really improve from the first to the second fight with Jake. Jake did improve, and even though the second fight was absolutely ass to watch, Jake definitely had Woodley's timing down and hit him with that big right hand to knock him out. The highest ranking fighter KSI is for is Logan Paul. He is 4th on this list. Logan Paul was an insane mountain for KSI to climb. I mean, do I really need to say anything when KSI won by split decision and Logan had points taken away? I mean, that just says it all, really. Logan was a bit of a beast in that ring. I mean, he was way more experienced than KSI at that point in terms of training. KSI took a lot of time off with music and then did camp for Logan, whereas Logan just kind of went in all full throttle since the first fight and realistically should have won. He was the favorite in betting sites everywhere, and yet KSI managed to sweep that victory. Next up, on the 3rd place of this ranking list, I got Anderson the Spider Silva. Now, you might be thinking, but Logan, shouldn't he be second? You know, who's first? Who's second? Listen, Anderson Silva was pretty good, you know. He was actually a professional boxer. You know, I think it was 3-2 before he fought Jake, and he was pretty good. He was a southpaw. He was very experienced, great striker, but he wasn't that good a boxer, and Jake pieced him up. Not easily, but comfortably. But in 2nd place here, we got Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz gave Jake Paul the biggest run for his money Jake's ever had in a fight in which he won. Nate Diaz, in rounds 8, 9, and 10 for that fight against Jake, pieced him up. It wasn't even a close competition at that point. Nate Diaz was kicking Jake Paul's ass. However, for the first, 7 rounds, Jake Paul dog-walked Nate Diaz. Not because Nate Diaz really was like getting his ass beat, but because Nate Diaz didn't really turn the fight on. He didn't really go all out. He didn't really try that hard. He was going 70-80% for the first 7 rounds and then really paled the pressure on in rounds 8, 9, and 10. And that's where you saw him have success. But of course, in 1st place is Tommy Fury. I mean, he beat Jake Paul by decision. He's going to fight KSI. He is that guy. He is the guy that is said to end YouTube boxing, apparently. That's what he wants to do. Tommy Fury is by far number 1 in the YouTube boxing pound for pounds if you rank him there. And yeah, Tommy Fury, he definitely beat Jake Paul convincingly, and most people think he's going to beat KSI convincingly. But we'll see after October the 14th. Who knows? Now, thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this video of ranking every KSI and Jake Paul opponent. I appreciate you all for watching. Please subscribe and like, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Subscribe. Subscribe now. Subscribe.